What does it mean to be transgender in Ireland today? I sat down with Laylah Beattie to discuss her story of growing up in Ireland transgender. Together, Laylah and I walked through her childhood as she reflected on the lessons she learned from her youth. Starting with her earliest childhood memories and her move from Dublin to County Wexford at age 7, the story leads into her experiences with school and bullying. During her adolescence, where Laylah, then David, was prescribed a counsellor, it was through therapy that David was able to acknowledge his depression and eating disorder. However, it wasn't until David was in college that he fully came to terms with the fact he was born in the wrong body. After coming out to his friends and family, David decided to change his name and pronouns. On his 20th birthday, David said goodbye, and Laylah was born into the world. So where I want to start off on, Laylah, is, can you remember your earliest childhood memories?
I have this one memory, which is a really nice one, of me in my house in Dublin, and I must have been absolutely tiny. I remember lowering myself off a kitchen chair and stepping over my dog, and it took me ages to step over him, and bringing my plate up to my dad and asking him could he make me some more peanut butter on toast. And yeah, that's my earliest memory, I think, which is a nice one to have. But mostly my earliest memories are quite sad, in that I remember going to bed and wishing that I'd wake up as a girl. That would be my last thought at night, was, oh my god, if I just woke up as a girl tomorrow, everything would be better. And I'd wish as well that it would just be sorted, my family would just always have remembered me as a girl, and things would just make sense in that way. And then I'd wake up the next morning and I'd be, I don't know, putting on my clothes for play school or for school when I got there, and I'd be halfway maybe through brushing my teeth or something, that would hit me then. I'd be like, oh, my wish didn't come true. My wish didn't come true. I'm actually still in the same body. So yeah, that's a really tough thing to remember, especially because the childhood, you want to remember it fondly, but I think there was just so much confusion at that time, and my memories are really tainted by that.
At that time, did you realise what being transgender was?
Oh, not at all. I thought I was a weirdo, because it wasn't publicised anywhere. No one knew about transition, people who transitioned or whatever. I don't even think my parents had ever heard about it, and if they did, it was never a child that did it. Whereas nowadays, there are children who are transitioning, and stuff like that. And I think if my parents did even ever hear anything about it, they would have dismissed it as an American fad or something like that. But I never would have heard about it ever, as a child growing up in South Dublin. So yeah, I really just thought it was kind of an accident, a freak of nature. And I thought that the only way I could survive was by keeping this really, really, really strong aspect of me as much of a secret as I could.
Growing up, Laylah was charismatic and outgoing. She would play dress up with the boys, often taking on female roles in many of the games.
I always remember school being fine, primary school, because kids are just so adaptable. I went to a boys' school in Dublin, and I was only there until first class. I did as far as first class there. And I remember we used to play games. It's so funny. I suppose it's funny for anyone thinking back on these things because it seems so silly now, but we used to play this dinosaur game. That was, my class was obsessed with the dinosaur game or whatever, and they'd all be dinosaurs and I'd be a woman that they were chasing, and all these boys just adapted to it. I was this is what I want to be, and they did it. That was always our game. I'd say occasionally somebody might be why do you want to play as a girl or something, and I'd just be I don't know. But kids are just so unfazed by stuff like that.
As Laylah grew older, she became increasingly aware that her behaviour and sense of self was out of the ordinary. After moving from Dublin to Wexford at age 7, she felt a pressure to conform to masculine traits and hide her femininity.
That's a hard one to answer because I moved to Wexford at 7, and I feel like that was an age when my femininity stopped being cute for a lot of people, if that makes sense. You know, when I was younger, moms loved me when I came over to friends' houses, and like dads kind of used to laugh at me as well. Like, look at this child, like acting kind of, I don't know, just being all showy and jazzy and stuff like that. Whereas I feel like by the time I kind of hit 7, 8, I really got the sense, particularly from males, from older males, that like I was no longer acceptable. That my behaviour was really inappropriate. So it's hard to say. Like, I remember one of the first people that I became friends with in primary school, I went home to his house a few times, and his dad, he told me after I'd been at his house a few times, his dad used to call me Gavit, because my birth name is David, and he used to call me Gavit. And, you know, that was a really upsetting experience for me, to know that I was being ridiculed by this man who's probably, 30-something years my senior, if not more, and that, you know, his whole family were having a giggle about it, about me just being me. So, and now that I think about it, they were from Wexford, and I don't know if I ever experienced anything like that in Dublin. You see, I have to think about it in this way as well. Like, we were part of the community for years in Dublin, so everyone around us knew our family quite well, and everyone I socialised with were people who would have known my family. So I don't think anyone would have said anything about me, really, because, you know, they knew my parents and they knew my sisters, and they thought that we were all quite, I don't know, a normal family. And then when I got down to Wexford, I arrived into school, and I think that, you know, I did make ripples in a way, and people had all sorts of opinions on that. Like, I was such a hyper aware child. Like, I could tell the minute if I went over to a friend's house and if their dad was a bit like, you know, quiet around me or whatever, I'd immediately be like, well, he thinks I'm a freak, he doesn't accept me. But I'd be like, I could probably get the mom on side, and I'd be trying to be really charming to the mom and stuff like that. I don't know, it's just like, it was just such a hard thing to navigate. And honestly, I would say that it was a very different experience being in rural Ireland than in Dublin as a child. But I don't know if I could put into words what the difference was, if that makes sense to you.
One of the biggest struggles during Laylah's adolescent years was going through puberty. A confusing and difficult time for any teenager, puberty can be traumatising for transgender and non-binary teens.
It was so incredibly hard. I didn't like being a boy when I was a kid, and you know, I was just getting a hold of those emotions, and then suddenly it felt like my body was working against me. Like, you know, I started growing hair, and that was uncomfortable, because we're told that women don't have hair. Body hair. My voice got deeper. Oh, that killed me. You know, my voice breaking was really upsetting time for me. My Adam's apple protruded. That was awful. I got a bit of a moustache. That was horrific. It just felt like every time I got used to one thing happening in puberty, another thing would arise that I'd be like, I hate that, I hate this. And I hated my body, I hated what I was in. And, you know, I stopped eating because I wanted a small, frail, fragile body, because I wanted it to look feminine, Now that's obviously a very disturbing statement, saying that a female body is small and fragile and frail, but you know, that's just the idea that I had. The one of the many messed up things that my little brain computed was that was what I needed to do to look like a woman. So yeah, I had no real desire to look after myself during puberty. You know, I showered very infrequently. I've had very bad hygiene. I just didn't care. And I didn't eat. And you know, when I look back on pictures of that time, I just looked so sick all the time. And like, it's so obvious to me now that I was just in such a period of distress. But, you know, at the time, it was just one of the struggles that I had to face was that puberty was crappy for me. But bear in mind, you know, that this didn't make any sense to me. But I just thought that was the burden I'd have to carry as what I thought I was, which was a freak of nature. I thought I was the only person in the world who felt these emotions. So, yeah, puberty was distressing, but I also didn't think there was any other option. And like now, you know, there's teenagers going on puberty blockers and stuff like that, and you know, I'm often asked, would I have liked to take them? And of course, I would have liked to take puberty blockers. It would have saved me an awful lot of distress, but it didn't happen at the time. And that's just something I have to accept. That I have that trauma to carry, which was me hitting puberty.
So you've been through childhood, through teenage years, through bullying, through an eating disorder, through child of divorce, to rock bottom, to coming out as transgender, to you've been through a lot, Laylah. I just want to know, what's the goal now? Where do you see your future?
I used to have such big goals because I used to think that there was only one way to be a woman, which was to be the perfect woman. But I've made my world a lot smaller in recent times, and the goal now is to keep just listening to my body, keep doing what's best for myself. It used to, you know, my body used to say, slow down, and I used to be like, no. Whereas now I really do have to listen to it. And that's definitely what I work on with my therapist, is just doing what's right for me. So my goal at the moment is having no goals. Is to just take every day as it comes. You know, when you start to spend every day wishing that you weren't alive, you really realise that the things that you thought were important aren't. So right now I'm just readjusting my priorities and figuring out what actually is important to me. And you know, that's friends and that's family and that's enjoyable experiences, and that's what I'm going to keep doing for the foreseeable.